Hello, I'm Tim Kuda back with you here, CBKRadioland.com. And guess who's back with me once again? Our friend, our pal, we love him, we know him, CBK. CBK, how are you doing today?
Very well, sir. Thank you so much.
Well,
how was your night?
My night was pretty good, actually. So
no tornado?
Hey, did you like seeing it was fun that Megan got to join us, and she shared it with her friends. She texted me last night after I shared it with her, and said she was going to share it with her friends. So we might have teenage listeners now. Can you believe that? That'd be pretty crazy.
Sweet.
The teenager peoples. All right, so here's the deal. Normally, back in the day, at this CBK Radioland place, we used to play music, and it cost money to play music, and it was fun when we played music. And we had shows, and CBK did the Monday show. Remember the Monday show, CBK? Do you remember that?
Oh, the Monday show. Man, I missed that. It was awesome.
Yeah, the Monday show. We also did this other thing, this other cool thing called Rock and Roll History. So I decided today that it's Sunday, and normally the Rock and Roll Histories would play during the weekend. That was our big time to play. So I decided that we, here at CBK Radioland, the podcast version, we're going to do a live CBK Radioland Rock and Roll History Minute. Let's get this thing started right.
Hi, I'm Dick Bartley, the Oldies Countdown guy from American Gold, and the next voice you hear will be that of Cannonball Kelly.
We love Cannonball Kelly. We love Cannonball Kelly. On CBKRadioland.com. This week in rock and roll history on CBKRadioland.com.
So this week in rock and roll history. CBK is with us. CBKRadioland.com. You remember that intro, right?
Man, I want to get all the sounders with the ones we did, all those. I want to get them all on one kind of a YouTube video thing,
like this,
because all the radio guys
Hey, this is NG Kelly from the American Hit List, and it's now time to tune into Cannonball Kelly on CBKRadioland.com. See if you can tell the difference. Pushing forward the time machine button now.
There we go. CBK is with us, yes. The American Hit List, Machine Gun Kelly. Anyways, so this is the Rock and Roll History live version here on the podcast version. Now, the only bad thing is that we're not going to have the tunes unless we want to sing them or something. We're not going to have the tunes, but we have the information, and I got it ready to go. So we're going to do it a little bit differently just because of what we're doing. I'm going to read it, and then we're going to talk about it. CBK and I will talk about this, and we'll see what happens. But this is going to be the live version of the Rock and Roll History, or the podcast version, if you would like. So,
cool, man.
So in 1958, Connie Francis enjoys her first chart success as "Who's Sorry," reached Billboard's #4 spot. Over the next 10 years, she would place 55 more songs on the Billboard Hit Parade. So Connie Francis, what do you know about Connie Francis, CBK?
Oh, she was a great lipstick on your collar gal. She was a great late 50s, early 60s kind of a new, I don't know, what do you want to say? What would you call it? It's funny how singers come on board and with American Idol these days, they don't do it like they used to. It's as I'm waving a fly in here. Wait.
Kill that fly. Kill it.
It's amazing how entertainers back in the day were found, like Elvis, right? It's just, I don't know. You just think about people who play the piano, and like Megan was doing she said she's learning dancing and keyboards. If you have the skills to play music, and then you become famous, like Connie Francis, for example, it's pretty cool, man.
No, it's actually pretty cool. So before we continue on with our live rock and roll history, what I need to do is I need to get this up on our Facebook Live page so people are know we're streaming live, because if not, we're not going to have anybody watch. Not that matters, I guess. So, all right, we're gonna throw it up on the CBK page, the CBK Facebook page, and let everybody, all the folks out there know that we're streaming live again, so that way they can get the live rock and roll history. How about it? Maybe people can
cool.
check that out. All right, it's posted.
Wow.
So maybe we'll get some viewers now. Maybe somebody will.
On the website, on the CBK Radioland website, there's a link that says like live now. And normally when you're just looking at the website and we're not live, it's not live, right?
Correct. It's not live. If we're not,
but
we're
now
not live. So anyway, so that was Connie Francis. So we got to keep doing this right. So if I can get the button here. Well, it would help. It would help if I turned the volume back up, because I had to turn it off to go to the YouTube page, so that way our own voices didn't come back at us and we were like, "Whoa!" So now let's try this again. All right, so we're done with Connie. 1958. Moving on.
This week in rock and roll history on CBKRadioland.com.
In 1969, a baby boy is born that will be adopted by Ronnie and Phil Spector, who will name the child Dante Philip Spector. You know anything about the Spector gang, huh?
Well, I know about Mr. Spector's in jail right now.
Oh, yes, he is, isn't he?
But yeah, Ronnie Spector, the Ronettes, right? The famous, you hear them a lot during the Christmas season, right? Of course, they have a great hits. The Wall of Sound is where he came from, right? Good old. He was a genius, man, a composer genius, like Brian Wilson.
Yeah, Spector. You're right. He's in jail right now, and Ronnie Spector was actually. We talked about this right. One of our last shows that I did was the Eddie Money tribute, and we talked a little bit about this at the Eddie Money tribute. That one of the songs that Eddie Money did, he referenced Ronnie Spector in it. Actually, remember that?
I think I do. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's the type of influence they had on rock and roll history. So now,
this week in rock and roll history on CBKRadioland.com.
In 1973, Dr. Hook and the Medicine Show got their picture on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine after their hit, The Cover of the Rolling Stone. Reached number 6 on the U.S. single charts. According to members of the group, they really did buy 5 copies for their mothers, just like they said in the song, like the cover of the Rolling Stone.
That's a great song. Dr. Hook, man, love that guy.
Dr. Hook and the Medicine Show. I love that one. It's like it's the Medicine Show, isn't it? It's
like, all right, let's tell them what we do.
We played that song a bunch on the live radio show. I think the CBK Radioland Monday show. I know that made an appearance because I remember singing "The Cover of the Rolling Stone."
What was cool about the rock and roll history weekends was you didn't hear the same song, which is like you're supposed to do it in real radio, right, Tim? The normal rotation, you'd hear the Bee Gees, right, or you'd hear the Jets, or I don't know, whoever. But on the weekends, because of songs like Connie Francis and then the Dr. Hook and the Medicine Show, we would say that, and then we would play the song, and you wouldn't hear it Monday through Friday per se, right? Unless it was a special trip or something.
Or maybe it was just in the rotation. Usually what I would do is you would add the songs, and then I just throw them in the rotation. So then they would show up in the rotation. I love that. I remember one time you told me, you were like, hey, you never played, we'll use that one, Dr. Medicine covered the Rolling Stone, and we played it on the Rock and Roll History, and then I heard it on Wednesday.
Yeah, I love that. Oh. I don't know if you've noticed on some of my Facebook posts, I've been posting because the alt CBK stuff is starting to show up now a year earlier, right? So it's fun. I miss that alt CBK. The jingles were awesome, and I that was great. When you said let's do some alt, I was dying. So cool, man.
I know. We got to do a little bit. You had that 2 hours or 3 hours of alternative every night, I believe, that we did.
And I think the last rock and roll history we physically did on CBK, there was a couple, I think Nirvana was in, and the Arctic Monkeys, man.
Right. Yeah.
They were in the rock and roll history.
Yes, they were. So
it just shows how time has progressed. When I was working for KGMZ in Hawaii, remember I told you the story where Jay Stone, who bless his heart, he's gone beyond, right? He died going to the airport, leaving after being fired from the radio station. I was doing a request show, and someone said, "Hey, Cannonball, can you play some the Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, right, from 1974?" So I played it, and then the song
you got
playing,
fired. And then you got fired, right?
I didn't get fired, but the hotline was ringing, ring, right? So, and it was Jay,
You're right.
and he said,
"You can't play that."
Yeah, he said, "You can't play that song. It's too new." I'm like, "It's one of the greatest hits of the 1970s. What are you talking about?"
It's too new. A lot of people died, man. A lot of people died. Have some respect. Yeah. Well, yeah, but you're right. You're right about that, how the time changes, and then all of a sudden now Nirvana is now rock and roll history, because if you think about it, it's 2020, and when did Nirvana come on the scene? Oh, almost about 25 plus years ago. So that would qualify it as history, at least in most books. We lost CBK there for a second. No, he's back.
I'm messing with my cough down there.
All right, so let's move on.
This week in rock and roll history on CBKRadioland.com.
In 1975, Led Zeppelin had all of their 6 albums in the top 100 of the Billboard's album chart. So if we were going to play a Led Zeppelin song, because now that gave us a freebie of any Led Zeppelin song to play, which one would we have played?
I would have gone down the list and kind of seen what songs maybe I've heard, or maybe something I wanted to hear, and I'd put it in. So it could have been, the California one, or it could have been, I don't know, whatever I felt like to play, it would have played, and that's the way I did it.
Would it have been Stairway to Heaven? Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah,
classic.
probably.
Yeah, I don't know.
Probably,
that one's. I would say if I was in charge, and I was actually, I would say I would.
For like 2 weeks, man, 2 weeks.
Yeah, I know. I would have probably played a little bit more of a deeper cut, but a good one nonetheless. So that would have given you a freebie on that one. You could have played whatever you want. So moving on.
This week in rock and roll history on CBKRadioland.com.
In 1978, after 14 years of marriage, Tina Turner divorces her husband, Ike, and it becomes final.
Final.
So which one? So now, once again, now we got a Tina Turner song. We could have played we could have played Tina and Ike together, since they both were mentioned. We probably would have had to do that.
Yeah, probably. The abusive guy that he was to her was not cool, man. But we even though bad things happen with artists and even us as bad as people, I consider it being a great one of the greatest hits anyway. So I would have probably played both the Ike and Tina song. Yeah.
The Weekend Double Shot we would have played too, because we did that from time to time. We might have played a Ike song, a Tina song, and then maybe them together. We could have done that too. That would have been. Because you're right, Tina Turner did actually have a great career on her own. Once she broke away from Ike, she did a couple mega ballads in the '80s, and then she kind of went away in the '90s. But still, she did really well.
I think she still has the greatest legs in rock and roll history. I think, right?
I don't know. That's a rock and roll history moment right there. Rock and roll history. All right, let's keep it rolling.
This week in rock and roll history on CBKRadioland.com.
In 1980, Ronald Sell, a Chicago antique dealer and part-time musician, songwriter, files suit against the Bee Gees, Paramount Pictures, and Polygram Records. Sell alleged that the Bee Gees, How Deep Is Your Love, plagiarized 2 sections of a song he wrote called Let It End. Sell won the case even though the Bee Gees claimed they never heard Sell's song and the whole thing was a coincidence. The group would successfully appeal the decision in 1983. So, how deep is your love?
Is your love?
So
is your love?
It was a plagiarized song. We talked about the Bee Gees in our last podcast because you couldn't remember the Bee Gees from the 70s or something like that. No, Andy Gibb, their brother. We talked about their. It's in there somewhere. We mentioned Andy Gibb, their brother, but the Bee Gees. It's pretty interesting that in the first time around, that the guy won the suit, but then they appealed and they got their money back in 1983, or never had to pay any money. But the Bee Gees were pretty successful back then, and especially in that Saturday Night Fever movie is really, I mean, the whole thing is the Bee Gees basically, and then the one Frank Stallone song maybe.
Yeah, even early Bee Gees, like Holiday and those songs, when back in the early '60s, when they were, by the way, they were dual citizenship too. You know, that UK folks, and they also lived in the Australia. And they switched. They went from place to place, I guess, at some point in their history as well. But it's funny how their light career started when they were younger. And then the disco thing and that movie with John Travolta, oh, man, just blew up crazy.
Right. Well, there was a couple of them. It was Night Fever, right? And then
Staying Alive.
Staying Alive, right. And that's where Frank Stallone got involved, but that was later. I think that was the other one, that one song where they all danced to. Well, maybe that's in the rock and roll history. Right. So, all right. Maybe. Moving on.
This week in rock and roll history on CBKRadioland.com.
In 1985, the singing nun, whose given name was Jeannie Deckers, committed suicide after the Center for Autistic Children in Belgium. After the Center for Autistic Children in Belgium that she helped found closed due to lack of funds. I could have swore we've said this before. This is very familiar.
We did. I did. It was one of the last ones too, and I just interviewed Jenna Suru from Paris, and at the same time, right? So I was like, oh, we're gonna play this song, the singing nun song, from Jeannie Deckers, who was a real nun, and she did go beyond because of her stress. But it's just funny how that coincides with Jenna, and I'm still in touch with Jenna too, man. That film she was in, went to L.A. I was invited to go as a speaker and a guest. And just last week, the UK Film Festival just took it. She got female director of the year, best award, something like that. Just this past week, man.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I know. I see that she follows us, or we follow her, or all that stuff, and she comments on some of your stuff. So yeah, good for her. Yeah, but I remember that one. That's very interesting. Maybe we did it March 29th already. You never know. At some point, you're going to go through all 365 days. But
they were only 1 week, right? So sorry, seeing my naked eyes or whatever. But hey,
that's a band.
They repeated a lot. And I was like, okay, is this ever going to stop or what?
Well, right.
So we did this last week.
Here we go. Continuing on.
This week in rock and roll history on CBKRadioland.com.
In 1986, Beatles records officially went on sale in Russia. Before that, only tapes were available on the black market, but most Soviet music lovers could not afford them. There was little information about the Beatles in the USSR, and the official Soviet publication about the bands were mainly critical and condemnatory. So, let me ask you. Now you got a Beatles. You've got the whole Beatles album or the library to go from on this one. You could play any Beatles song. Which one would you think you would have gone with?
We had a lot of Beatles, a lot of Beatles, which I was super impressed with. Probably back in the USSR because of the Russia connection.
That's what I would do. That you have to do that. Flew in from Miami Beach to the OAC. Didn't get to bed last night. Right?
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Love those Beatle guys.
Exactly. All right. So that's what we would have done. The Beatles. The Beatles.
This week in rock and roll history on CBKRadioland.com.
In 1996, two former members of the 1950s vocal group, the Teddy Bears, filed suit in Los Angeles against producer Phil Spector and several labels. How about that? Carol Connors and Marshall Lieb allege, Carol Connors and Marshall Lieb allege that they had not received royalties from the reissue of the 1958 number one hit, To Know Him Is to Love Him.
Is to love him. Yeah.
You've said that one before.
Yeah.
I know you've said that song. Did we play that song? I'm almost positive we did.
Yeah, the Teddy Bears. 1958, great song. Phil Spector was in the group, the Teddy Bears, there was two girls and the boy, and it was Phil was the boy.
Well, there you go. Phil was the boy. And I'm doing these live reads, by the way. I'm not prepared at all, so I'm doing them just for those who think when I screw up a word, I apologize. This is what we call in the business a live read.
Last night after I listened to the show, I was thinking, man, we need a voice guy, man, to do all the
do a live read.
We'll have to call Chad TK, and he'll have to do a new intro for this podcast.
Yeah, he will. Probably. That would be cool. Oh, hang on. I just screwed up the thing. Here we go. All right. So now moving on on our rock and roll history weekend.
This week in rock and roll history on CBKRadioland.com.
Oh, here we go. We would have had a ton of songs on this one. In 2001, Brian Wilson was honored in a 3-hour tribute at New York's Radio City Music Hall. Guest performances included Billy Joel singing Don't Worry Baby, Paul Simon's acoustic version of Surfer Girl. Phillips also did make a rare appearance as the Go-Go's in the trio Carly Simon and David Crosby, Jimmy Webb. Also singing Beach Boys songs were Ann and Nancy Wilson, Elton John, Amy Mann. Brian Wilson himself joined the fun when he took the stage for the final 3 songs, Barbara Ann, Surfin' USA, and Fun, Fun, Fun. We would have had a lot. We would have had a long stretch of music here.
That's what I liked about some of those facts when they came in. We would have, Beach Boys and then Elton John and whoever. We would play songs from every artist mentioned, which is cool, and that would make the show longer.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes our rock and roll histories were an hour and a half, pushing 2 hours sometimes. They were pretty crazy.
We had 2 hours, I remember, a few times, yeah.
But, yeah, it was great music. And so, you look at that, Billy Joel, that's obviously great. All these great artists, Paul Simon and then Wilson Phillips, he gets, one of the daughters up there, and then the Go-Go's. That's pretty crazy. So a lot of Ann and Nancy Wilson. I think Hart is very underrated. I think Hart has done some really, really good stuff. But those are great songs.
Oh, yeah.
The Beach Boys, I heard this once, when back in the day, it was you were either a really big, huge Beatles fan or a Beach Boys fan. Like the Beach Boys were that instrumental in shaping that type of music in that era. Now, obviously, the Beatles are way more popular and took off. But kind of early on, the Beach Boys you were either in that group or that fandom or the Beatles. It was interesting how that worked back then.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have 2 interesting facts. And I saw yesterday on Facebook someone wrote, "Are you a Beatles fan or are you a Frank Sinatra fan?" And there was so many people saying, "Are you crazy?" They don't even coincide at all, right? Totally different eras, totally different music. I wrote, "Please," with George Harrison's guitar in there.
Nice. Very nice.
But the other thing I was going to say, when I was doing radio just over there in the Gig Harbor, when I was in the Puget Sound 20 years ago over there, actually, because I just noticed that the Kingdom imploded 20 years ago last week, and I was here when that happened. At Gig Harbor, I did a Beatles Beach Boys shot. So I did 2 Beach Boys songs and then 2 Beatles songs, and I intermixed like Beach Boys, Beatles, Beach Boys, Beatles. So I did them back to back. I called it the Beach Boys double shot or something like that.
Well, that's pretty cool. That was, I mean, the Beatles and the. You're right. Frank Sinatra doesn't really go into that. The Beatles and the Beach Boys were coexisting together. In that point, that point in time, Frank Sinatra, big band. You don't expect Frank Sinatra to be in that same conversation. I don't. I mean, it would be more important. I think it would be more practical or whatever to say the Beach Boys and the Beatles. Were you a Beach Boys fan? Were you a Beatles fan? You can be both, absolutely. But it was just that surfer music. And I mean, a couple interesting facts about the Beach Boys, which I'm sure you do know. The Beach Boys, Brian Wilson was not a surfer. He did not surf. He was afraid of water. He wanted the music. He knew that Jan and Dean was a huge influence on the Beach Boys and Brian Wilson. So he felt like, okay, this is what we have to do. We've got to make this music because this music is going to be popular. Kids like to surf and they like cars, because a lot of people don't realize how many car songs the Beach Boys did. I mean, it's just, then the Be True to Your School thing, and it's like that. They weren't just at the beach. They had a few beach songs, but because Beach Boys, you think Beach Boys, oh, okay, Surfer Girl, Surfing USA, but Barbara Ann is not really a surf song, and Little Honda is not, Be True to Your School. They've got a ton of songs that really had nothing to do with the beach.
Yeah, it's funny how they took that name, I guess, the Beach Boys. I think later, too, when Murray, their dad, Murray, the douche that he was, mean guy, man. He was a bad dude. And he didn't like Brian. He didn't like the success. And then he later, after they kicked him out of the band, at some point in their history, toward the end of their career, I think, he found that other group, those other weird beach kids, and they did the Sunray song, that sun, woo! You know that song?
Yeah. I don't think we played that one.
It's a great song.
No.
It's a great song, but Murray, man, that guy screwed up, man. He's a jerk.
All right. Moving on.
This week in rock and roll history on CBKRadioland.com.
In 2005, most often remembered for his 1965 hit, Everyone's Gone to the Moon, Jonathan King was freed from a UK prison after serving half of his 7-year term for 4 indecent assaults and 2 serious sexual offenses on boys ages 14 and 15. After he left prison, "I'm innocent against these charges," he said. There is no issue of acts being consensual. They were no acts. Well, there you go. Maybe we'll move on.
This week in rock and roll history on CBKRadioland.com.
In 2006, Tom Jones was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II at Buckingham Palace for his service to music. Dun, 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 dun. It's not unusual to be loved by anyone. That's what would have happened.
TJ, man, TJ.
I mean, you would have,
as he's known in the UK.
We probably would have played that song. I mean, I guess. I mean, there's a couple Tom Jones songs I guess we could have played.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Anything you know about Tom Jones other than TJ? I know that was one of the names you guessed yesterday or in the last podcast.
Yeah, TJ, as he's known in the UK. Don't get him mixed up with Tommy James. That's a different guy, right?
Yeah, Tommy James.
It's funny you mentioned the Queen Elizabeth. I've been kind of peeking over someone's shoulder watching The Crown. Have you seen that on the Netflix?
No, I can't say that I have. I'm hearing about this.
Not that I'm into that.
There's this new Netflix show called like Tiger King or something like that. That's all the rave. I don't even want to deal with that, but everybody's talking about it.
Yeah, I saw some people. I don't know what that is either. I think he's a ex-football guy, and maybe now he's a singer. I don't know what it is. And he has tigers. I don't know.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Moving on. Tigers are crazy tigers.
This week in rock and roll history on CBKRadioland.com.
In 2011, Ray Herr, guitarist for the Ides of March, on their 1970 hit Vehicle, died of esophageal cancer at age 64. Here we go.
The horns, man, the horns. Horns.
I'm a vehicle, baby. Thank God I heaven
1970,
know
man.
I love you. What was that? The guy from Survivor who wrote one of the guys. Man, why is the name? Oh, his name's escaping me. I'm running into CBK memory at the moment. Crap. He was in that. He was in Ides of March. Ides of March were from the Chicago area, and so I've heard about them. I've heard about them because they're that vehicle, baby. Thank God in heaven. Oh, what are you doing, man? I'm losing you. He's cleaning off the screen. CBK's cleaning off the screen, man. We can't see him. All right, here we go. Moving on.
This week in rock and roll history on CBKRadioland.com.
In 2012, a TV ad for Madonna's new perfume, Truth or Dare, was deemed too racy for ABC television network. Dressed in leotards, fishnets, and a harness, the Material Girl was shown licking her lips while wearing black lingerie and a mask, rolling around on the floor. Truth or dare, truth or dare, truth or dare. Do you remember it? I remember we talked about Wayne's World, mentioned that last podcast before about being in Aurora, basement in Aurora. But I remember they did a parody of Truth or Dare on Saturday Night Live with Wayne and Garth, and they did the whole Truth or Dare thing. You know, was never really much of a Madonna fan. I mean, there's a few songs from the 80s I like that, I guess the more bubblegum pop 80s stuff I guess I kind of like from time to time. I always thought it was interesting when she developed a British accent because she wanted to be British, I guess. I don't know. She's from Detroit, Michigan. So there you go. I mean, I know she seems to always want to marry she wants to marry or be with or date somebody in their 20s. It doesn't matter how old she is. It's got to be in her 20s or 30s. And once they hit like 35, boom, you're done. I got to turn you in for a newer model. But I guess men do that all the time too. So it shouldn't, it's not fair to criticize her if men do it all the time. I mean, Dennis Quaid, actor Dennis Quaid, who I think is like 65 years old or something like that, or he is, or maybe 50. I think he's 60, like 60 or 65. He's marrying a 26-year-old. They had to put their wedding on hold because of the coronavirus. But I mean, good for him, I guess, right? Good for Madonna. You can go rob the cradle, go do it.
The only thing I remember about Madonna is when she kissed Britney Spears, I think, on one of those musical award shows.
Yeah, that made all the headlines back in whatever year that was.
Yeah, come over here, give me a big smooch. Come on.
That was before that was popular or trendy, as they say. All right, moving on.
This week in rock and roll history on CBKRadioland.com.
In 2013, a letter from John Lennon to Paul McCartney, written in 1971 during the aftermath of the Beatles' breakup, was announced as being one of the items put up for sale on May 30th as part of the online auction organized by the Profiles in History. So this would have given us the opportunity to play a John Lennon song and a Paul McCartney song and a Beatles song, and we would have thrown in a George Harrison song just because we like George Harrison. So
yeah, why not?
Why not? We had all the power back then. We don't now. We are trying to be legal because I've heard like they've changed the laws. They've actually made it easier to get sued if you do use copyright material. So I don't know if you know that. Not that they're going to come after the CBK Radioland only one viewer show, but you never know.
Dang it!
You just never know. And this is a legit organization. So, all right, what do we got? What do we got next here? We've got. Oh, come on, hit play.
This week in rock and roll history on CBKRadioland.com.
In 2015, 72-year-old Norman Greenbaum, who wrote and sang the 1969 hit Spirit in the Sky, was critically injured when the car he was riding in turned left, crossing into the path of an oncoming motorcycle. The 20-year-old motorcyclist was killed and his passenger was severely injured. After a lengthy recovery, Greenbaum returned to the stage in Santa Rosa, California, November 15, 2015. Spirit in the Sky. And we'd have to play that, right?
That is a song that obviously the year that I was born came out. Big, hippie guy. I don't know. There's so much to that song. It's so truthful, and it's about obviously not overcoming death, but going beyond, and then the spirits in the sky. That's a great song. I love that. Absolutely love it. And it's one of my first songs I think I ever got.
It's made lots of movie appearances too. It's still today. It still sticks around. Still sticks around today. And it was 1969. Spirit in the Sky. Moving on.
This week in rock and roll history on CBKRadioland.com.
In 2016, Patty Duke, who placed 2 songs on the Billboard Pop Chart in 1965 with Don't Just Stand There and Say Something Funny, died of sepsis from a ruptured intestine in 1969. Ew. That's why I was like, what? A ruptured?
That doesn't sound good.
A ruptured intestine. Patty Duke, we would play Patty Duke. You played Patty Duke on the ship too, and at KMGZ.
Yeah, KMGZ, KGMZ,
KGMZ. Oh, whatever. KGMZ, KMGZ, whatever. Midgez. So, okay, and here we go. Drum roll, please. Our final.
This week in rock and roll history on CBKRadioland.com.
Well, actually, we got 2 here. In 2017, after a 3-month delay, George Michael of Wham was finally laid to rest in a small, private ceremony attended only by friends and family. Michael died of natural causes at his home in the Goring Thames, Oxford or Oxshire, on Christmas Day, 2016. Something about the George Michael thing is like I was never really a huge George Michael fan, Wham fan, whatnot. I became, after he died, I kind of had a better appreciation for his music. And actually, he died of the same phenomenon or whatever as my father did. And so I just thought that was interesting that he died on Christmas Day, and he's got, Last Christmas. It was kind of, he has that song. He's just, that was your last Christmas, dude. But I have a little bit more of a respect for his music, and I have found that I really enjoy his music now more than I probably did when I was, younger. I mean, George Michael had some issues. He ended up having some things that caused him angst.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of him, especially later. And the slower songs he did, I didn't like him. But I liked Wham. I love the "Wake Me Up Before You Go" guy. I'm a big pop guy, man. CBK is a pop guy. He likes all the pop hits.
We like CBK alt and CBK pop. All right, so now this is our final. This is our final one.
Not K-pop, not K-pop.
Not K-pop, like Megan said. Yes. All right, here we go. Our final one. Oh, I gotta hit the button. Gotta hit the button.
This week in rock and roll history on CBKRadioland.com.
In 2017, the United States Library of Congress added Don McLean's 1971 hit American Pie to their National Recording Registry of 2016. American Pie joins Julie Garland's Over the Rainbow, NWA album Straight Outta Compton, and the Eagles' 1976 The Greatest Hits as treasures worthy of preservation. So there you go. You got Don McLean, American Pie, which, I'm going to tell you a story about American Pie. This song is played at weddings a lot, and I don't understand it. You cannot dance to this song. This song is impossible to dance to. It starts out slow, it goes fast,
minutes long.
and it's 11. Yeah, right. And it's 11 minutes long. So it's just yeah, I don't understand that. I don't understand why people play it. NWA,
I never
straight out
heard
of
that at
Compton,
weddings.
man.
That's weird.
Yeah, straight out of Compton. So that was our rock and roll history. Oh, we got to do this right.
Thanks for listening to This Week in Rock and Roll History on CBKRadioland.com. We'll be back next week. The Rock and Roll History is brought to you by Cannonball Kelly, produced by Tim Kuda and MIBT Media. This has been a MIBT Media production.
Well, there you go. The live rock and roll history for March 29th here at CBK Radioland. So I got all these fun things we can still like where's this one? I got to find. Oh, man.
I can't believe you got the sound effects. That's cool, man. I love it.
Here we go. This is one of my
favorites. This is CBKRadioland.com.
It's CBKRadioland.com. Don't forget it.
Man. Yeah, feel it. Headbanging music. CBK Radioland. Excuse me, Cannonball. Remember, we don't play music here. I want you to remember that. No music. I'll talk. I want to talk radio. Sure. Have a good day. Colonel here. Yeah.
If you want All Talk, go to All Talk Radio, KS something something, with Rush Limbaugh. Listen to that jerk, whatever. Talk radio, dude.
Talk radio, dude. So now that we can't, the Colonel, we got to find the Colonel. We haven't talked to the Colonel in probably 10 years, so we need to. Or maybe
the Colonel is gone beyond, I think.
Yeah, the Colonel has probably gone beyond. All right, well, we're going to call it a night here at CBKRadioland.com on our live rock and roll history. But in the quarantine zone that we are living in, who knows? Maybe we'll just keep knocking these out, these CBK Radiolands, and just keep going and going and going. So, CBK, I hope you had a good time today.
This was great. Yes, thank you so much. I love it. I love it. And thank you for all you're doing here to keep us insane, right? And keep the radio dream alive.
Exactly. Keeping the dream alive. All right. So for Cannonball Kelly, CBK, I already did the ending. I'm Tim Kuda. We'll catch you next time right here at the CBKRadioland.com podcast. Catch you then.